Hi, everybody. I am Rob Campbell, Vice President of Partner Strategy with eComp. I want to thank PayEntry for sponsoring this session, and thank you to every one of you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend this webinar. Um, eComp is an insurance agency that specializes in commercial insurance and especially workers' compensation that's offered through a really unique integration with PayEntry. We also specialize in commercial risk and claims management for our clients. I've spent my entire career, spanning about 20 years, focused on payroll integrated insurance, risk management, and human resource solutions. My background gives me a unique combination of knowledge and skills that are relevant to all businesses. I come from a family of small business owners, and I have a small business of my own. With my family and my personal experience owning a business, combined with my professional experience in risk management, I have a firsthand understanding of the life of a business owner. The highs are great, and the lows are, well, not so great. Um, and I have a passion for helping my clients, other business owners, and the people that I partner with, like the awesome folks at PayEntry, to help you all succeed in your own entrepreneurial journey. You can build a great business, but not managing and transferring risk correctly will put all of that effort and passion in great jeopardy. I like to say one of the best services that I offer is allowing stressed out business owners to sleep better at night, a very, very, very underrated component of being an insurance and an HR professional. There really has not been a harder time in the last 100 years to employ people. It's a noble task. We appreciate you for doing that, but it's also a very risky task. And managing employment risk, managing your workers' compensation, managing your safety is a critical function for employers today. And so in this webinar, we'll discuss risks that you have as an employer as it relates to workers' compensation, better ways to manage your cost of workers' comp, and some claims management best practices that rely heavily on your HR infrastructure. We will discuss ways to prevent, respond, and transfer those risks as an employer. So let's start today by really just setting the stage. We don't have a lot of time together, but we're going to make the most value of the time that we do have together. And so we'll talk about, workers' comp and the policy management, the cost, right? Workers' comp can be one of your larger balance sheet items, and you can actually have a very heavy impact on those costs. A lot of people don't realize that, and so I think that'll be a good takeaway for you. Workers' comp is required by law with very limited exceptions. So most, if not all of you, have a workers' compensation policy. And if you don't, you should anyway, regardless of your compulsory requirement. Workers' comp is a policy that requires active management, but that active management is honestly overlooked by the vast majority of people that I talk to on a daily basis. And of course, it's directly related to your employment risk as an employer. With the workers' comp policy, we'll look at premium management, claims avoidance, investigation, and your overall HR management. We'll also look at a specific and very preventable claim example that really could have been supported with some sound HR practices. Managing workers' compensation policy premiums is a very important and often mismanaged policy, and it comes with financial and liquidity risks. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to do some level setting first. There's several options for managing your workers' compensation premium payments that you may or may not be aware of. For a quick foundation, workers' comp is ultimately a payroll tax. And the premium that a business owner pays is a percentage of the employee's wages, right? That's why I refer to it as a payroll tax. In my experience, it's honestly one of, if not the most complicated payroll tax that a business owner has to manage. And I say that for several reasons. The percentage rate that you pay varies by state, it varies by industry, and depending on your operations, it's even different for individual employee groups within the same business, right? When you shop and purchase for your workers' comp policy, you have to predict the future, right? Wait, what the heck does that mean? Well, you have to project your payroll amounts by state and job classification for the upcoming 12-month period. And the insurance company will then collect an initial down payment, maybe premium paid in full, and then they'll bill you on some sort of predetermined frequency for the balance of that premium payment. However, if you don't pay that policy in full, your costs go up, right? You either don't get a discount or they add additional billing fees on top of that on a traditional direct bill. Now imagine if PayEntry called you tomorrow and said, hey, we need to know how much you're going to pay your employees for the next 12 months because we're going to prepay your FICA taxes. You would all run for the hills because that would make 0 sense. And paying workers' comp based on your estimates makes the same amount of sense. None. At the end of a traditional policy, you are going to need to complete an audit. Many of you are probably doing that today. You're probably calling your insurance agent for help, and they're very often telling you that they don't do workers' comp audits, and they would traditionally be right. You may be calling your CPA, who very often does not help with workers' comp audits because they don't want the E&O exposure for not being licensed. So the audit may be simple. You may be just uploading or emailing your payroll records, or it may be very intrusive. The insurance company may want to come to your location, inspect your operations, look at your financial records. So sometimes it's a non-event, sometimes it's a major event. In simple terms, you're not going to prepay your payroll taxes. Workers' comp is a payroll tax. Don't prepay your workers' comp either. Now, that audit process may not be problematic if your annual or your payment process in general, if your annual payroll is flat and predictable, right? If you know you have one employee and they're going to make $52,000 a year and that's not going to change, or they're going to get a small cost of living, like, okay. But most businesses experience normal or even large fluctuations in employee counts, payroll amounts, incoming revenues, seasonality, and those business fluctuations can really add a complicated component to your workers' comp. There's a bunch of pitfalls to that traditional process. And as much as one of these scenarios sounds better than the other, I'm going to tell you both of these are bad, right? This pertains to your workers' comp audit. So when you complete your workers' comp audit, scenario one is you overestimated your payroll. And that could be just because of a poor projection or a reduction in workforce or something catastrophic that closes your business temporarily. In these cases, when you complete your audit, you should expect a refund. And as great as that sounds, let's translate that into better terms. You gave the insurance company an interest-free loan. They held on to your money for the entire year, and then they gave it back to you. With inflation, especially today, that money that they gave back to you has less buying power than when you gave it to them. So if the reason for the overpayment is something like an incident that temporarily closed your business, right? A fire, a natural disaster, a car drove through your facility, whatever it may be, you probably could have used that money that the insurance company had when you were experiencing that sudden catastrophic event, right? So don't give the insurance companies interest-free money. That's a no-brainer. I don't got to go too deep into that. Scenario two, also bad. You underestimate your payroll wages. In this case, you're going to owe premium after the audit. And that becomes a potentially compounding issue, right? And it could really put you in a liquidity issue. Profitability or not, it may damage your liquidity because the audit comes at the end of the original 12-month policy term, right after you made your down payment or premium paid in full for the next 12-month policy term. What that means is within a 30 to 45-day period, you're going to make your down payment for the new term, and then you're going to have to pay all of your past premiums for the last policy term. And so all of that can compound together. It could be unexpected, and it could put you in just a liquidity issue. If you're super liquid, maybe that's not a problem. But really, cash liquidity management is a very important function for you as a business. And the scenario I just described being very problematic because what you may end up having to do is put your insurance on a credit card, maybe use the premium financing offered by some insurance companies at a 20-25% interest rate, or dip into a line of credit that you have. All of those things increase your overall workers' compensation policy cost. And there's another component that we didn't discuss that causes issues with the workers' comp premium payments and audits, and that is usage of 1099s, right? A lot of things that come in at 1099s. We'll take a deeper dive into that separately. So you have a few options when it comes to managing and paying your workers' compensation premiums. The traditional method, and still the most common method for paying workers' comp, is what I call the traditional method, what I just described. It's the process of projecting your payroll by state and class code for the next 12-month period, paying a down payment or maybe in full, paying monthly installments that come with a fee, and completing an annual workers' comp audit. This method of workers' comp premium payment may be fine for you. That's fine. If you stick to this method, I'm going to make a simple recommendation, though, to prevent the risks that I described, and that is track your premiums. Ask PayEntry to provide a workers' compensation report or periodically look at how much premium you've paid relative to what the estimate was. Take a look sporadically throughout your policy at how much payroll you estimated versus how much you actually paid during that time period, and give yourself at least an indication of, have you overpaid and you're expecting a refund, or have you underpaid and you should set some money aside for the pending audit. A better way to do that is pay as you go. There's two options for pay as you go. They're similar, but a different way about achieving that goal. Option two is self-reporting, right? Most workers' comp insurance companies offer a payment platform called payroll self-reporting, or they may have their own fancy name for it, like Exact Pay or Payo or something catchy. With payroll self-reporting, you will still make a down payment each year based on projected payrolls. Some carriers don't require it, but most are going to require to make a down payment still. And then the remaining premium is paid by logging into the insurance company's portal and manually entering your payroll wages or uploading an Excel file to report your payroll wages to the insurance company. So they're then going to ACH that premium from you based on those actual payroll wages, and you've achieved pay as you go with a down payment, right? Not bad. The downside is it's manual, right? It's just another manual process that you have to do. You or someone in your organization has to take on the task of manually reporting the data to the insurance company. You have the down payment. You may have some fees associated with it. Usually they're still charging you billing fees or third-party fees, but you've achieved pay as you go, and you're going to help to avoid some of those audit discrepancies. Because it's not a true payroll integration, the insurance company is still going to audit you, though, right? Because you are manually self-reporting, and it's not coming from a third-party payroll company. So you're still going to get that intrusive audit at the end of the year. It's going to help you with cash flow, though. Option three is payroll integrated pay as you go. PayEntry offers an automated way to report payroll data and pay the workers' comp premiums based on actual wages. There's a lot of benefits to payroll integrated pay as you go over self-reporting. The first one is insurance companies are going to waive that down payment when they know the payroll is going to be coming automatically reported each pay period by a payroll provider. The risk of non-payment or inaccurate payroll data reporting to the insurance company is removed with this method, and the results are the insurance company is a lot more comfortable not collecting that lump sum upfront down payment. You can often get better rates with payroll integrated pay as you go because the insurance company's risk of non-payment is essentially eliminated. Right? They trust that the payroll industry is going to report to them actual wages. They can ACH on the actual wages. No risk of funny business. they'll get more aggressive with pricing because they know they're going to get paid. You don't have the manual process of self-reporting payroll wages. Pay entry is going to do all of that work for you. And the last and potential greatest benefit of payroll integrated pay-as-you-go is the workers' comp audit is significantly more streamlined. And in fact, you might not even experience an audit. So as part of the eComp service, when we have the payroll data integrated, we get the payroll data from pay entry, and then in most cases, we can complete the audit on your behalf automatically. You may not even know that this is taking place. Now, if you were large, complex, multiple state, tons of different operations, we may need your participation. But if you have a homogenous industry, if you're a restaurant, if you are a artisan contractor, if you're an office or a retail store, we're going to automate those audits the vast majority of the time. So think about how painful your audit is and look at a solution to minimize that pain. I mentioned earlier that we would circle back to the topic of 1099s. There's a lot of risk with paying wages via 1099, right? HR risk, compliance risk. There's a lot of workers' comp risk that comes with paying 1099s. And so for the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to focus on that workers' comp risk. There's a common misconception that if you pay 1099 wages, you are not required to provide them or pay for workers' comp on those wages. Many business owners feel that is especially true in cases where their 1099 is an owner-only business with no W-2 employees of their own. And in that case, the 1099 receiver has no compulsory requirement to carry workers' compensation themselves. I will tell you in my career, this is one of the biggest pieces of misinformation that I experience on an almost daily basis. And I have encountered companies that have literally ruined their business because of this error. That problem is honestly getting a lot worse because the government is continuing to scrutinize the 1099 classification more and more. If you're in places like California, where they have AB5 law, New York, New Jersey, those states are being very aggressive with enforcing not only classification of 1099 workers, but paying into the workers' compensation system. Although it's technically true that you do not legally have to provide workers' comp to people that are paid via a 1099, the insurance company carries a lot of risk from 1099s. And as a result, they're going to charge you premium for any 1099s that do not carry their own workers' compensation policies. That's really important. You might have been bit by this in the past on a workers' comp audit. Most people have been. More and more 1099s are challenging their status as a 1099 when it comes to workplace injuries, right? So a workers' comp claim can result in somebody saying, "Hey, I shouldn't have been a 1099. You've been taking advantage of me. I should have been a W-2 employee." They challenge their status over unemployment. They challenge their status over other benefits or entitlement benefits. When a 1099 gets injured and is unable or unwilling to cover their own medical expenses and lost wages, they seek and receive those benefits from the hiring entities and the insurance company because they challenge their status as a 1099 in order to receive the benefits of a workers' comp policy. So think back. How comfortable are you with your 1099 compliance, right? What contracts do you have in place with your 1099s? What audits have you had somebody perform on your 1099s? How often do you evaluate and make sure that your 1099, who was good 6 months ago, still fits the description of a 1099? If you're not sure, seek some guidance. So as a result, state governments, state funds, private insurance companies, they've all adopted a stance that if you pay 1099s and you don't get a certificate of insurance that documents that those 1099s carry their own workers' comp policy, the insurance company is going to make you pay premiums on those wages because they have risk. They are going to fight the claim. The 1099 is not automatically covered. But if they look at that layout and say, yeah, this 1099 probably should have been a W-2 employee, they're going to pay the claim. They're going to come back to you for back wages. You've opened up a Pandora's box of problems. Again, you can understand too, clients, when an employee, when they get, everybody's happy being a 1099 until the moment they can't pay their medical expenses and they don't have any income coming in, and they drive by a lot of billboards every day that says, were you hurt at work? It's very easy for them to seek help, right? So you need to be very defensive, and be very document oriented towards that. The businesses that I've encountered that have mismanaged have had two major problems, right? When the workers' comp audit is completed, those companies owe a huge balance for 1099 wages that were not included in the payroll projections. I've literally had companies come back and have accrued six-figure balances because they had uninsured 1099s. Contractors are especially susceptible to this because that industry has a higher likelihood of having 1099s. Those businesses are more likely to be unprepared with their documentation, and the premiums, the rate per $100 for construction class codes are a lot higher. So those balances grow very, very fast. The other problem, and potentially even larger, is when a business with no W-2 employees and no workers' comp policy has 1099s, and those 1099s challenge their classification in order to receive the benefits of workers' comp. When that 1099 worker is successful in challenging their status and it's determined that they should have been a W-2 employee and thus they were entitled to receive workers' comp, and you as the employer didn't carry workers' comp, that is majorly problematic. Now, in my career, I've had numerous business owners tell me they're going to take the risk because you cannot get blood from a stone, meaning they don't have assets, so they're not worried about. However, the number one reason that you started a business is to grow your income, improve your assets. And even if that statement were true, I promise you, nobody can in fact get blood from a stone like the government. There are countless examples of business owners facing criminal charges, jail time for exploiting the 1099 classification to avoid workers' comp specifically and other entitlements. Protections offered by LLC and corporations can be penetrated in cases like negligence, so it's just not worth the risk of misclassifying 1099s that should have been W-2 employees. And that's also why I say, whether you are compulsory required to carry a workers' comp policy, carry a workers' comp policy, right? Just in case. Very affordable protection. The goal is not to scare anybody away from using the 1099 classification. If you're going to use it, you just need to make sure that you are compliant and that you are requiring your 1099s to carry workers' compensation no matter what. Partner with Pay Entry. Let them help you. They will help you to evaluate this. They will help you to protect yourself. We will help you on the insurance side. And that's the partnerships that you need. Now, that's workers' comp premium management in a nutshell, right? There's complex here. We're going to talk about some other webinars that are coming to go deeper into this. Our time is short, so I'm going to stay relatively high level. That's also a small introduction to your risk management of a 1099. At the end of the day, I highly recommend that you utilize some form of pay-as-you-go for your workers' compensation so you can avoid all of the surprises that come and the manual work that comes from your annual workers' comp audit. So let's turn the page to workplace injury and claims management, right? We got another session that's going to take a deeper dive into this. But let's talk about one, how do you plan for workplace safety and prevent injuries from occurring? Who helps you with that function? And let's talk about injury response. How do you respond when an injury occurs, and how do you manage that claim? Right? So you have risk of payment, you have risk of audit. People also get hurt, right? Like that's workers' comp is one of those insurance policies where claims are expected at a much higher rate, right? When it comes to workplace safety, and we're going to do some more webinars on this. We could go on for this for a 52-week webinar series. But I'm just going to start and ask you some open-ended questions. And if you can't answer these to yourself, then you need to leave with the task of getting answers to these questions. And your friends at Pay Entry can help with that as well. We'll then talk about the role HR functions play in preventing and managing the risk associated with workplace injuries. And so the first question I'll ask you is, what are you doing to promote a safe working environment? What are you doing to promote a culture of safety in your company? And who helps you with that? If you do this alone or as an internal function, ask yourself, is there truly that expertise in-house, or would some support help? Whose job function is devoted, at least in part, to workplace safety? What is your insurance agent doing to help you manage workplace safety? As an insurance agent myself, my job is not only to transfer the risk for you via an insurance policy, but as an insurance professional, I help my clients who are engaged in the topic of safety to reduce their risk with a lot of services that are offered. Some of these are offered by the insurance companies. So, are you taking advantage, right? Next question. Are you taking advantage of the risk management services that your insurance company offers? Has your insurance agent made you aware? Because your insurance company has an interest in making sure that you're safe and not having employees get hurt. When you purchase a workers' comp policy, are you commodity shopping, right? Are you going out there and saying, give me the cheapest workers' comp policy that you can find? Are you also considering the additional risk management service that your insurance company is offering, or that your insurance agent is offering? As an example, some of our insurance companies offer what's called a nurse triage service to reduce claims expenses and even avoid claims. With a nurse triage program, when a minor injury occurs, the employee is provided access to a nurse triage phone number. A medical professional will evaluate what to do in the event of that minor injury. The goal, where it makes sense, is to avoid the trip to urgent care, the trip to the emergency room, the trip to the doctor's office, and respond to a minor incident with a virtual doctor. No claim, right? So somebody got something in their eye. Do we got to go to the emergency room? Do we got to go to urgent care? Can nurse triage treat that, right? They got a minor burn. Can they take a look at that and say, hey, get this cream, put this ice on it? Like no reason to go to urgent care. They still have all those rights. They can absolutely go seek that medical attention. We are not directing them not to. We're offering them another solution to avoid you opening a claim, right? Another example of an insurance carrier services virtual or on-site loss control. That's where the insurance company will come and perform an inspection of your workplace and make recommendations for how you can improve safety, right? Before somebody who's going to show up and give you a gotcha, right? Like OSHA. OSHA's not showing up and making some recommendations, right? They're showing up and levying fines and penalties. The insurance company is going to come up and they're going to make recommendations on how you can improve safety, right? So evaluate those questions that I asked. That's a way to start. And if you don't have good answers to those questions, then you should leave here today with a task to get started with. It's totally fine to recognize that you have too much on your plate or not enough employee resources to make this someone's job duty. And Pay Entry is well equipped and eager to help you, and so are we at Ecomp. So just evaluate. Are you prepared or do you need help? Help is okay. That's why you're here today. You're evaluating if you're ready or if you're going to get some help. Let's look at the role that HR plays in preventing and responding to workplace injury events. I can't tell you how many clients I've talked to about past claims, right? If you've gone shopping for insurance, very often we need a history of your claims activity. And companies, partners, our clients, they will tell me, oh, this claim was fraudulent, and the insurance company just paid the claim anyway. And I can tell you for sure, the insurance companies are not in the business of paying for fraudulent claims. However, the burden of proof is on you as the employer, and the employer has to make the case to the insurance company so they have the information that they need to fight the claim. And that foundation comes from your HR functions. Now, We're going to talk a little bit about fraud and look at a likely fraudulent example in a minute. However, it depends on whose stats you believe. The insurance industry estimates that fraud accounts for between 15 and 25% of all workers' compensation costs. That's a massively large number when you look at the size of the workers' comp industry. The prevention and documentation and claims management topics that we'll talk about apply to all claims, regardless of whether you think it was questionable or fraudulent or not. And you should prepare for workplace injuries and follow a documentation process, regardless of your perception of the claim. These components are really important in workplace injury events and preparing for them, right? You don't want the first time that you talk about, accident investigation is when something really bad happens, right? You want to have this foundation already built, created, practiced, right, in place. That starts with a few important functions, right? So here comes another list of questions. How are you setting and communicating company policies around safety? Do you have a dress code, lifting policies, drug and alcohol policies, procedural policies, driver responsibility policies, company vehicle policies? Do you have them, and how do you communicate them? Do you have a policy for reporting workplace injuries that details who and how to report any incident that caused any potential bodily injury? You don't want somebody to come to you with a claim and say, hey, 6 weeks ago I got hurt. I haven't really mentioned this yet, and now I have this major medical bill because of it, right? The insurance company wants to fight that claim for you, I promise. You got to give them the details. You got to have the policies that says, hey, well, why didn't you report this to me when it happened? Because that's the policy we communicated to you and that you acknowledged. Is your staff and leadership trained on how to respond, investigate, and document all incidents that could result in a claim? And do you have an organized manner and a space to store those details long term, right? Attorneys will play the long game in these litigations, right? Employees turn over, people lose interest, they get pissed at their employer, they don't want to help you in an investigation anymore, right? Time's not on your side if they're playing the long game. Do you have HR support or legal counsel to help guide you and your staff through scenarios that include workplace injuries? Think about those questions, answer them to yourself, seek help if you need it. A handbook is the easiest and probably the best way to communicate those items, but there are other enhancements and alternatives to that, right? Do you have something in place? Anything? Do employees acknowledge receipt? Are you posting things in break rooms? Are you providing and documenting safety training, right? Management training and other preventative measures that you are taking to prevent or prepare for these situations, right? Common sense is unfortunately no longer common. You would think if somebody came to work drunk and got hurt, it's too bad, so sad. It's not. Do you have a policy? Have you told them that they haven't come to work drunk, right? That they can't do that. Sounds common. It's not common sense, unfortunately. If a workplace injury goes beyond the medical care and lost wages and other workers' comp benefits that employees entitled to and becomes a litigation event, are you able to paint a very clear picture of that specific situation, your overall safety posture? Are you able to defend yourself to avoid this becoming a runaway cost, right? Stuff's going to happen. Employees are going to be entitled to some benefits. They'll be entitled to making themselves whole. You don't want punitive damages. You don't want the court system to say you are an irresponsible employer, and so we are going to increase these costs of what that employee is getting. Protect yourself, right? Be able to go in there and say, yes, we have ladder safety. Yes, we have driving policies. Yes, we have all of these things. And with everything we've done, the employee still got hurt. Accidents happen, right? And you want that system to look and say, you're right, you did what you could. We're not going to penalize you. So let's look at a real life example of how HR infrastructure, or unfortunately in this case, the lack thereof, leaves the business and insurance company no options to dispute a claim that has gone to litigation. This is a real life claim, right? It has been redacted, of course. I highlighted the loss description, right? Employee was washing dishes and soap got in her right eye. The next day, the employee's eye was swollen. A month later, the employee let HR know. A month later, the employee let HR know that her eye has been bothering her due to that incident, right? Should soap in the eye cost $28,000? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would dump a lot of soap in my eye for 28 grand, right? Let me add some more detail to the claim, right? Because the loss details don't give you all the details. Let me give you some more details of this claim. This is one of our claims, by the way, right? For a client. That's why we know the details. So the employee worked for this business for less than 3 weeks when the alleged incident occurred. Per the employer, no mention of the injury was ever mentioned until a month after the alleged event, documented in the claim. That claim description is the employee's description, by the way. So they admitted that they didn't tell their employer for a while. The employee briefly sought medical attention, then discontinued medical treatment, stopped communicating with the employer, and retained an attorney. Lovely. Awesome. Out to a hot start with this one. The employer and the insurance company both feel like this is a fraudulent claim. The insurance company has no interest in paying $28,000 for soap in the eye. The employer is standing on the fact that this is fraudulent. It probably is, let's be honest. Here's the problems. The employer had no policy about reporting workplace injuries, no matter how minor, right? So they never communicated and had the employee acknowledge that they needed to report that minor incident. An employee who was a peer, right, in a position and was cited by the injured worker as witnessing the injury, denied any knowledge of the injury. Like I said, I had no idea that nothing, I was not aware that any of this took place. So great, they had a witness, right? Somebody to say, yeah, that somebody that the injured worker said, well, they saw it. That witness said, I never saw it. Attorney played the long game. As time passed, that employee left, and then they stopped communicating with the insurance company and the attorney. So now your witness out the window. The employer did not document any of those witness statements in their own investigation, and with the injury reported more than 30 days after, the ability for them to investigate was limited. The alleged soap in the eye injury occurred in 2021, and this claim was open for multiple years. The employer, which is a restaurant, right, is in a known high turnover industry. The employees who were there in 2021 are no longer there. They got no documentation. They didn't have any HR infrastructure to stand on, no acknowledgement of reporting injuries. The insurance company would love to fight this claim. They don't have a lot to fight. That lack of HR practices has put the employer and the insurance company at a severe disadvantage in responding to this claim. Time is on the side of the alleged injured worker, and their attorney has been negotiating for an injury settlement, which they are ultimately going to get at some point. For the employer, this is an open $28,000 claim held against their loss experience and taken into consideration by their current and any prospective insurance company that they're shopping with. Puts them in a tough spot when they're trying to control their workers' comp costs. In all honesty, this could be a much worse situation. Had the alleged injured employee continued with medical treatment and stuck to their story that they had vision problems and lingering effects, the insurance company would likely be rushing to a much larger injury settlement because they don't have a leg to stand on in the dispute. As it is, this claim has been open for more than 2 years or was open for more than 2 years. The employee is going to end up with an injury settlement. And this is, in all likelihood, most likely a fraudulent claim. All right. So if I lost your attention at any point in the last 30 minutes that we've been talking, I hope you're paying very close attention now, because this is the risk that comes with a lack of HR practices, a lack of policies, a lack of management training, a lack of third-party support, not using these services that are offered by your insurance agent and your insurance company, right? Soap in the eyes, nurse triage. Let the nurse triage say, here's how you're going to treat that. We're going to touch base tomorrow, make sure it's not a major incident. You're going to document and report. You're going to have a file. This sucker's not going to catch legs, right? This shouldn't have been a claim at all. This shouldn't be on the employer's loss history at all. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, that's why I pay insurance, right? And the business didn't pay the claim. And, some of that's true, I guess. However, the short-term impact is an increase in the cost of their workers' comp policy, as this is an open claim. Think about other employees, right, who maybe they built friendships with, and they're saying, dude, I got a payday on this one, all right? So now your culture is hurt, and other employees might seek that payday. This could earn you a debit experience mod, which is going to increase your workers' comp costs even further. And I mean, I've literally experienced situations like this where the same attorney ends up representing other employees with questionable workers' comp claims. We call those culture claims, right? Workplace culture is very important, and you do not want to have a culture where employees would prefer to be out on workers' comp than they would prefer to be at work. That becomes an incredibly difficult problem to fix and has terrible consequences for the business. Right? I hate my manager, so I'm going to use any little incident that I can to go out on workers' compensation or any other entitlements that they could have. The burden of proof is still on the employer and the responsibility to fix that problem. So what's on the screen is an example of how did these claims damage your policy, right? So this is an example here, and what I highlighted is the experience modification, all right? The insurance industry, right, set by every state, has a mathematical formula that compares your premium paid to your claims paid, and it kicks out a number called the experience modification. That is a non-negotiable reward or penalty applied to your workers' comp policy. In this case, incredibly detrimental. Experience mod of 1.44. So what was a $56,350 policy, right, had $24,794 added to their costs because of their experience mod, because of their workers' comp claims history. That's real dollars, right? Real dollars coming right off of your profit margin. Now, you got to have a good insurance agent. You got to have good support around you. This is another one of our clients, right? What we were able to do is we were able to go back and get a credit applied. All right, a 39% credit applied to offset that. How did we do that? We said, look at all the HR infrastructure they put in place. Look at all the things. They recognized that they had a problem. They sought support. Now they have company policies. They have an outsourced HR resource. They have all of this safety training. Help them, right? And we were able to paint the picture for the insurance company that says, hey, $56,000 is still a really nice policy, right? Apply a credit, help them out. Here's all the stuff. And they did that for us, right? We went to battle and we worked that out for them. Still hard. You don't want to be in that spot. I could have got them a bigger discount if they didn't have that experience mod, and I could paint that same picture. So it still costs them a lot of money, I promise. This is what you're looking for. This is where you want to be, right? This is a restaurant class code as well, right? $7,840 in premium. They have a 0.76 experience mod. That's a 24% discount. Drop their premium down to $59.58. But wait, there's more. We were still able to paint this great picture for how much of a responsible, well-managed employer they were. So in addition to that 24% discount, the insurance company added the maximum discount of 50%. And so what started as an almost $8,000 policy ended at just under $3,000. That's where you want to be. That's real dollars. None of this factors into what happens when an employee goes out on workers' comp and the other employees that have to work overtime to make up for that, and the cultural impact and all the things that come from a workplace injury. This is just real dollars and cents that are hitting your policy. Last, because we're running out of time, right? Let's just kind of talk about how that situation could have been prevented or limited. Not from the standpoint of the actual injury protection, right, prevention, but from HR infrastructure. We talked about the foundation of having company policies, right? And one of those policies should include that all workplace injuries have to be reported no matter how minor. Someone or all of your management staff should then be trained on how to respond and investigate that injury. That includes gathering and storing a detailed account of what happened, what chemicals may have been involved, getting signed employee and witness statements, and directing the employee to seek care if it was needed or if it wasn't needed. Had the insurance carrier provided and the employer had taken care of the additional services like a nurse triage hotline, like additional safety training resources, like providing personal protective equipment, we probably wouldn't be in this situation, right? Had all of those things been in place, the claim may not have occurred at all. Soap in the eyes should not have been a claim. Nurse triage is going to tell you exactly what to do with that, right? The employee may have recognized that the employer was investigating and directing care and simply returned to work, right? Part of this is demonstrating to your employees, like, we got our stuff together, right? We know what we're doing here. We're investigating this. We're taking statements. And they say, yeah, no, you know what? My eyes are fine. I'm going to go back to washing the dishes, right? If it went beyond that, the employer would have been able to provide documentation to the insurance company that they could have used to dispute what they perceived as a fraudulent claim. They still would have had a claim. They would have been obligated to the medical expenses. It wouldn't have been $28,000. The insurance company would have fought this. They wouldn't be seeking a settlement. The insurance company wouldn't be looking to get out of this for as cheap as possible. They'd be looking to get out of it for next to nothing. HR infrastructure being critically important in defending that claim. I'm going to kick it back over to my friends at Pay Entry. They may highlight this. I threw it in there too. Come back. Hang out with me August 26th. We're going to talk about ways to control workers' comp and manage that safety. And then come back September 16th, topic near and dear, employment practice liability and how your HR risk management plays a role in minimizing those things unrelated to workplace injuries, right? Your discrimination, your wrongful termination, those types of things. I'm Rob Campbell. I appreciate your attention today. Friends at Pay Entry, back to you.
Thank you, Rob, for going through that, and I think how you presented that and walked through those challenges. Whether it doesn't really matter what state you're in. Obviously, out here in California, where I'm located, there are a lot of heightened issues that we have to deal with. But this is a perfect example of where our HR support team comes into play, and specifically the HR audit. Right, there are a lot of times during that HR audit that we have these conversations, that we review payroll records, we talk about independent contractors, and we are able to figure out how to make some adjustments so that you are not, kind of caught off guard if and when, an audit comes into place, whether it's OSHA, whether it's something with the insurance carrier. Those scenarios that Rob described are absolutely happening. I think over the last 30 days, I think of at least two specific issues that I've been involved in that are very similar to where we just don't have all of the controls in place. And it's a capacity issue, right? We're not waking up every morning and going to work intending to, cut corners and kind of make a mess and get ourselves in hot water. But when we talk about proactive HR compliance, more often than not, it's like, well, yeah, you know what, I'm good. I've heard it a lot. Hey, I've been doing this a while, been in business for a few years. I haven't gotten, smacked around yet, so I'm good. I don't really need any HR. I don't need any support. Or, maybe we offer a little bit of support, but it's, I'll try to manage it on my own. And these are the specific instances here of why you might need a little bit of handholding, a little bit more coverage from an HR advisor, because as a business owner, you don't have the capacity to really cover all of these things on your own. And a simple oversight here, right, of not having, your T's crossed and I's dotted, now, 20 something $1,000, that's just an initial, that's a settlement that's coming, right? But what about the risk that's spread out now over the next few years? You go to the market next year and next year and next year to obtain coverage, and the cost keeps going up, right? And it's frustrating to me because it's one of those things where, man, if we sat down and we went through this HR audit and we were to kind of sniff all of this stuff out right now, right? It would be very inexpensive to implement some proactive HR support, and it would have more than paid itself, right? That claim that Rob showed, and the future now fees and increased premiums would have covered probably 5 years of HR support. So it's real, it's happening. We are here to help you on the HR side. I know we had sent out some information. It's we're almost at the end of July. It's perfect time now for a mid-year check-in to kind of see what you've got, where you're headed, and how we might be able to support you. The HR team is offering discounted rates on the audit. So if you saw that email last week, please just reply. If not, you'll see our contact information here in a few minutes. The Dina will put it on the screen, but please reach out. I'd love to be able to meet with you in these next few weeks and lay the foundation so something like this doesn't happen.